Hello everyone, I'm Grandmaster Denes Boros, and today I'm going to talk about Firouzja's comeback game. So, there are moments in everyone's chess career when you keep losing game after game. That's what happened to Firouzja. He lost to Carlsen, making like a bad opening decision, and then an even worse one against Rajabov, who actually has a fantastic tournament so far. So, this was the moment for Firouzja to try to come back. Now he's facing Anton Guijarro David, who's a very strong Spanish player and has been putting a good fight so far in the Skilling Open. Let's take a look. d4, knight f6, c4, g6. Now this is a choice that I definitely feel was the right one by Firouzja. He actually has lost a game earlier versus Carlsen playing e6, knight c3, d5, c takes, e takes, bishop g5. And I do think that was a strategical mistake of going into this variation for the following reasons. Carlsen already had some issues in that tournament, and not putting him to the test was probably a mistake. However, this time, Firouzja is ready to fight and goes for his beloved King's Indian. Knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, h3. Kind of the sound and the line of this century. Krasenkov introduced this line of playing h3 and trying to go for the attack instead of being attacked on the king side, which is a typical King's Indian play. White attacks on the queen side, while black is trying to mate on the other side of the board. Krasenkov, a famous 2700 Grandmaster, came up with the idea of h3 and trying to push the pawn eventually with g4 and actually attacking black instead of defending against an attack. Knight d7, bishop e3, e5, d5, knight c5, and here there was a novelty by David Anton, played f3. In fact, before only queen c2 has been played, defending the e4 pawn, leading to a more or less normal King's Indian structure. So f3 was played with the sole intention of going for g4, h4 type of King's Indian attacks and English Open attacks. But Firouzja is and always has been a big expert of this opening. Played knight h5, a very nice move, attacking that g3 square, f4 square, and also preparing ideas such as queen h4. Knight e2, and sometimes when you're losing one game after another, it's easy to make slight inaccuracies. In fact, the big inaccuracy that Firouzja made was castling, which seems very logical. Already, black should have tried f5 and tried to fight for the center. If e takes, gf, queen d2, black can still go f4, and after bishop f2, bishop f5, already putting some pressure on this juicy d3 square. And f5 would have been the choice that he should have tried. However, when you're having trouble finding a footing, it's easy to get in troublesome positions. So he played castles instead, which by in itself is not tragic, but is sort of losing time. Queen d2, f5, ef, gf, g4. A very strong move by David Anton, immediately pinpointing that your king on g8 is a little bit iffy. But if you ever played the King's Indian, this is normal business. Knight f4, going for aggressive play and trying to get a knight into that d3 square. On castles, knight d3, king b1, f4. Just closing it down, stopping any sort of ideas of g takes f5 and rook g1, which would more or less make it sure that white is the one who's pressing for a win. Bishop takes c5, knight takes c5, e4. Now if you look at this position, you might be asking yourself, so what is the problem? Why can't you go back to d7? Well, the reason is, if you go back to knight d7, there's knight e4, this bishop is dead forever, you can bury it, there's no hope for that bishop ever. And after knight c3, it is only white who's calling the shots, and David Anton is likely to just push on through with those h and g pawns. So here comes a fantastic practical choice by Firouzja. He goes e4 and says, hey, you take my piece, but at least I will get a very strong and active bishop on the h8, a1 diagonal. B takes c5, e3, queen c2, d takes c5. So far, Firouzja has been a little bit behind on the clock, and David Anton was playing and moving with big confidence. Knight e4, c6. So this is actually the reason I think this was such a fantastic choice by Firouzja. When he played Carlsen, he got into a bad position with no hopes of swindling. Here, there's maximum hope for swindling with this bishop being monstrous on the long diagonal. And there's no counterparts on the other side, even though white is clearly up a piece, so it should be a better position for white. But is it winning? I wouldn't go that far. It's actually not that easy to play with white. Knight c3, queen a5. And this is Firouzja's biggest asset. He knows how to keep the pressure on. And now on, David Anton slowly started burning time, which actually shows that he was very uncomfortable of being in the side of defender. Because if you don't know, David Anton is a very strong, aggressive player. And for him to defend is not really his cup of tea. In fact, the biggest issue that white is facing is the plan of rook b8, b5, and if the b file ever opens up, it's game over. So if David Anton would have realized that, he could have found this very nice defensive idea of a4, just stopping this b5 move. And if rook b8, then king a2, just hiding away from the dangers and even anticipating the attack with rook b1, with more than likely to be a better position for white. But he played bishop d3, which is a little hesitant. It's trying to checkmate. By the way, instead, knight g5, which looks like checkmate, does not work because of queen b4 check, king c1, and queen takes c3. And because of this pin, there is no way of winning the position. In fact, black is the one who is better. So bishop d3 was played, rook b8. Now, how tricky is this position? It is very tricky. So if white would play a4 now, no longer is black in trouble because b5 shows up. If anything opens up here, white is just going to feel the pressure. So already black is in the game and setting up quite nasty threats against that king on b1. Queen b3, king h8, making sure nothing funny ever happens there. dc, bishop e6. And now you can suddenly see that, yes, maybe objectively, white is winning, but black is trying real hard, and it's a very simple plan of going for b5 and blasting open the position. c7, and c7 is sort of a sign of desperation by David Anton, realizing that, hey, this is getting a little bit too exciting. Queen takes c7, and here I think already David Anton might have been panicking a bit too much. He plays queen a3, which is a bit too optimistic. King c2 was called for and hoping to go rook b1, just trying to run away from all these dangers. Instead he played queen a3, bishop g8, just getting ready, making sure these bishops are there and getting ready for the attack. Bishop c2, and black could consider taking the pawn on c4. However, in the spirit of the King's Indian, Firouzja played the best possible move here, and that is b5. Not only does he open up this for the rook, talking about active bishops and snipers, those bishops are going just to destroy white's defenses. Now here, if you check the computer says this is still bearable of a position for white, but if you're already low on time and you have to defend this in a rapid game, which turns into a blitz game as David Anton already had 2 minutes left, then this is an ideal scenario for Firouzja. C takes b5, a6. Why do we study openings? So we can come up with patterns like this, playing a la the banker. Black is not shy, sacrificing another pawn just to activate these bishops and open up the b file. Queen takes a6, rook a8, queen c6, queen a5, and already black is setting up unstoppable threats. a4, queen b4, king c1, and it seems that the worst is over, but then Firouzja shows his tactical skills. Queen a3 check, king b1, bishop a2 check. Now you can't capture that one because there's queen b2 mate. And if you go king a1 as happened, bishop takes c3, knight takes c3, queen c3 happens. And here David Anton resigned, but could have happened king takes a2, queen takes c2, king a3, rook takes a4, checkmate. So quite a comeback by Firouzja using his tactical prowess versus the very talented Spaniard. So sometimes you've got to take the risk and you should go into sharp positions, especially if that is one of the things that you excel at. So I hope you enjoyed this little lecture on Firouzja's game against David Anton. And if you have any thoughts, ideas, and comments about the game, please post it below and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching and see you next time.